Hey there, horror movie tea sippers.
The following podcast episode will contain spoilers for the movie we are about to review. If you have not seen the movie and do not wish to have anything ruined prematurely, please do not continue to watch or listen until you have seen the movie.
And welcome to the Horror Movie Tea Podcast. Today we are covering a Chinese ghost story which came out in 1987 and was requested by JD. Thank you so much for another request. We appreciate it. But before we go into the review, let's grab our cups and talk about tea. So we are being boring and we are repeating the tea from last week. Sorry guys, we didn't want to get waterlogged. I am drinking the Plum Deluxe Tea Break White Tea. It has white tea, orange peel, tangerine, honeydew melon essence, and love and gratitude, and is low caffeine.
I do really like that one.
It's a nice soothing tea. It's not my favorite by Plum Deluxe, but it's pretty up there.
Well, no, our favorite is the
Reading Nook. And then there's one other one that I'm like, oh my god, that one's amazing. I forgot which
I do
one.
like the tea break one, the white tea.
Yes.
But I am drinking Yogi's organic raspberry leaf tea, and that's legitimately all that's in it is organic raspberry leaves. I did add a little sugar.
Oh, naughty, naughty. Yes. But as always, thank you, Plum Deluxe, for allowing us to continue to do what we love. And for our tea sippers out there, brew yourself a cup of tea, sit back, relax, and we hope you enjoy the review. So for the summary of a Chinese ghost story, after a debt collector has multiple instances of what one would call bad luck, he has to spend the night in a haunted temple where he finds a female ghost that is very beautiful, very powerful, and and finds out, and of course he falls in love. And in order to save her soul, he has to battle this wicked tree demon.
That's basically it, yeah.
Yep, nothing, that's it. They're just trying to get her to rest. But for entertainment, I would personally give this one a 6. It's one of those films where, just so that way people understand my logical, rating scale, a 5 is if I can take it or leave it. But this movie, I can say I am glad that I watched it, even though I'm probably not going to watch it again. But it is an interesting movie because it goes really hard on their scenes. If it's an intimate scene, they go really hard. If it's an action-y scene, they go really hard. If it's a comedy scene, they go really hard. Just no matter what they're portraying, they're like, we're just going to go all out.
They're over the top.
Yeah. But it's kind of reminded me of, I don't want to compare it to Shaolin Soccer because there's this other Shaolin type of movie where these people are coming to a town and they are fighting off their city or whatever. But anyways, it's the because of the bread scene and then the fighting and then the randomness of the movie that happens throughout, it kind of feels like a Chinese comedy type of movie, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But to the movie's credit, I will say that the stop motion effects that they used were pretty darn creepy.
Yeah.
I was not pleased when I saw those, and they used those quite a bit. So definitely huge props on using the stop motion and the amount of stop motion. I mean, I can imagine probably took forever for them to do. The movie definitely did have some weird tonal issues, which I've heard from our requester that is kind of common for movies in that time period where they just kind of switch between spooky, love, tragedy, comedy. But I feel like that is kind of a detriment to the film because it's whenever you watch a film like a romantic comedy. It's like the whole reason why we have genres is because you pick a movie from that genre expecting a certain like feeling, you know, outcome, whatever. And so whenever a movie like just completely shakes that up, it's like, while that can be done well, in this case, it just made it more confusing.
Kind of felt like it did with a snow globe.
Yes.
Shaking it constantly.
Yes. Just like after like 10, 15 minutes, oh, new genre, shake, shake, shake.
As soon as it seems to settle into a groove, shake.
Yeah. It feels like that. But yeah, it's like this definitely gives the feeling of like a romance tragedy type of movie, like a Romeo and Juliet type of movie, but with like horror elements to it, which was kind of interesting. But, and then the effects, while they weren't the worst that we've seen, overall they weren't great. I would say that the stop motion was probably the best of the effects.
That was definitely the best.
But, I mean, I guess the blood was okay. We've seen better blood, but it wasn't orange at least.
Yeah.
But I will say it was a little bit frustrating. I mean, me and Jess were both like shouting at the screen on how thick-headed the main character was.
Yeah.
Like multiple people, even the ghost herself was like, I'm dead. I'm dead. And he just could not get it through his thick skull until he saw...
Not a person.
Yeah, like until he saw her grave marker and he's like, oh, she's dead. It's like, they've said this 5 times. Yeah.
And he freaked out for a little bit when he saw her again. And she's like, I told you.
Yeah, it's like, pay attention.
Listen to what she is saying.
But there are some, like, besides the goofy, like, bread scene and then the fighting scene, there were some, like, weird, funny, like, sexual comedy where it's like he would see her with her top off and he's like, ooh. Like when he is hiding in the bath and she's like, oh, I gotta change
away, and he just comes up for another look.
Yeah. Like there were some enjoyable moments, but overall I am glad that I saw this film, though, because I mean, maybe if I watched it again it'd be a little bit less confusing, but it's probably not one I will go back and rewatch. But I like the balance of the creep versus tragedy versus love. That's one reason why I really enjoy Asian horror films, is they tend to intertwine a lot of those themes, I guess you could call it, versus like, you know, American horror, it's like, oh, we're just gonna stick with absolute horror, terrifying. It's like, but it's like there's more to horror than that. And so that's why I really enjoy like these tragic, like horror love type of stories. And I mean, you know, we've covered Ju-on, which is a very different type of horror tragedy, a really great one. And I mean, even Dark Water, The Ring, or Ringu, all of those are creepy in their own right, but they have tragedy behind them, which kind of adds to the creep factor as well as your sympathy. But
there's depth to the story.
Yes, depth. Yes. Yeah, horror doesn't get a lot of depth. It's kind of sad.
It's really pretty surface level.
Yeah, well, it's like a lot of, I mean, not all Asian horror movies, of course, but a lot of them I feel like explore and create depth a lot better than a lot of the American horror films I've seen.
Yeah.
Besides all of that, I did feel that the film was a little bit confusing, and especially towards the end with the continuous super actiony scenes, it felt like it dragged on. So while overall I am glad that I saw it, there were definitely some setbacks that makes this not my favorite movie.
So I give it a 5. I feel like it was very confused about what it wanted to be and what it wanted to convey, especially in the beginning. There was a lot of funny stuff in the beginning. I was very confused though, and I couldn't really find myself enjoying it as much until about like the middle to about 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah, agreed.
When it finally found what it wanted to do.
Finally explained things.
Yes, explained things a little bit more and stuck with it. You do feel for the poor cursed sap that is the main character. Though I feel like a lot of his misfortune is kind of self-inflicted. But it's a little confusing. I feel like it's one that would require more than one watch. I'm just not sure if I feel up to giving it another watch.
Yeah.
It's all right, and I'm not upset that I watched it or anything. I'm just kind of eh. There were a couple of funny scenes, and I did really like the stop motion of the corpses crawling around. I thought that was really, really good. I actually kind of wish they had a little bit more of that.
Yeah, they kind of, after a while, they just kind of dropped those.
Yeah, after they fell through the floor and the sunlight hit them and they disintegrated, that was it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, there was no point to them.
Yeah. But then towards the end with the hands coming through the walls and stuff like that.
Was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool.
And then wasn't it like a mountain of skulls or at least bones? Whenever.
Mostly skulls?
I think it was.
I don't remember that part as well.
Put that when you're trying to fall asleep.
Yeah, well, the ending dragged a little bit, honestly, so. A little bit. But that's about it. I did take points off for doggo death. I know there were
3 doggo deaths.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were supposed to be the wolves. You could tell they were German shepherds. And they all died. And it was not okay. So, as always, I took off for that. But otherwise, it was okay. It's a lot better to watch with friends, as a lot of these are. But if you're looking for a scary or creepy movie, this is not it.
Yeah. Yep.
This one is like a very loose definition of horror.
Yeah, very loose. So, to be fair, we have covered other movies that are very loosely defined as horror.
We have. We definitely have. The Meg, for one.
Meg, Jaws.
A bit more action-y, but it's kind of hard to find a balance for shark movies. So, but we've seen a couple others too that are. So this one is definitely a bit more tragedy romance type, but with ghosts.
Yeah.
So it's all right. Like I said, it's just not quite my cup of tea.
Well, so for realism, I'm like...
So it's hard.
It's like the main character was like unrealistically dumb. And then the comedy scenes, it is kind of... But it's like, I feel like it is a little bit more realistic than Tetsuo. I know I did Tetsuo 1. Okay, so I will do this a 1.5. But like... A few of my points is maybe it's the fact that I don't know if there's a Chinese term for it, but her ghost seems to be kind of like along the lines of a succubus. So I don't know if it's because she's a succubus, but like the beginning scene with the guy, he jumped on her real quick. Like, real quick. And I'm...
You know, now that I think about it, it might have actually been closer to a siren. Because she wasn't actually the one killing them.
That's true.
It was the tongue lady.
The wicked tree demon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I was kind of going back and forth between a succubus and a siren.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if there's a dedicated word for that, but that's at least all from our knowledge. That's the only terms that we could come up with. But yeah, that scene, he just jumped on her way too quick. I'm assuming that, it was just like the main character where she just popped up and appeared. And the guy was just like, yay.
Yeah, she wasn't quite a lady in white, and she wasn't the one getting the energy from them and killing them. So
yeah.
She was calling them to their deaths. So I think it's closer to a siren.
Yeah, that's fair. Personally. That's fair. And then next, the bread. The bread was very unrealistic.
Nice bread.
Like, I understand that the bread was super hard, but it breaking a rock in half and then making a hole in a shoe, probably not going to happen.
Well, the shoe was a separate incident.
Well, I could have sworn that the shoe dropped on his toe and it made a hole.
No, he was going down a hill.
But that was a separate rip though. His shoe got ripped twice. The first time he threw it on a rock and it broke, and then he threw it on his foot, and then you saw his big toe sticking out. And then that's when he threw it, and then whenever he went down the hill, then that's when he's like, "Oh, why is..."
Because you keep saying shoe.
Huh?
You said you threw the shoe.
Oh, through the bread. Okay. My bad. Through the bread. On the rock.
Like the pronoun game.
And then through the bread. And then he throws the bread on his foot. And then his toe pops out. And then after that. Anyways, regardless. Bread's unrealistic. And then, okay. I don't know if this didn't make sense to you, Jess. But then... The people in the town looking for this, wanted criminal, they, grab the main character and they squeeze his face, super tight. And they're flipping through the pictures to see if he fits, the same resemblance as these people that he's looking for. I'm sorry. It's really hard to tell what someone looks like when you're squishing their face really freaking tight.
I think it was for the comedy.
I guess that's what they're going for, but... For realistic wise, it's you're not, no, that's not how you do that. And then a part of this is because of the effects, to be fair, but it did knock down for the realism, though it did up the entertainment. The fact that the main character was crazily freaking out over these wolves that, whenever they showed shots of them, the quote-unquote wolves were just standing there, looking at him. And just, watching him freak out and run away is just, it was just so bizarre to watch because it's just so over the top compared to, the actual threat that they were showing.
They weren't even in an aggressive stance. They were standing there want scritches.
Yeah, they're do you have pets and food? It's they're just a human. Yeah, that was... But to be fair, I know they're trying to go for aggressive, so...
Yeah. But there are ways.
Yeah, can you train a dog to show? Okay.
Yes, easily.
Okay, so yeah, I do take away from realism for that.
Yeah.
And then, lastly...
They get the most chill puppos on there.
Yeah. They're we get treats after this.
Yep.
But my very last point in realism, that was a part of my frustration with entertainment, is how thick-headed the main character was.
Yes.
Just, he is almost like Mr. Bean or Charlie Chaplin, type of clumsy and thick-headed and just... the kind that you're just you just want to take your screen and shake it and be like, what are you doing? Why don't you understand? He was just so unrealistically dumb or not unobservant or not listening. It's the multiple people just flat out told him in front of his face, oh yeah, she's dead, or she's been dead for over a year. And she was saying, I'm not a person and all of that. And just, he literally almost had to be slapped in the face with the fact that she was dead for him to actually get it.
She said, I can't leave. I'm not mortal.
Yes. It's what do you think that means? Yeah, and it's the frustrating part about those scenes is he'd be don't say that. And so I think he thought that she was degrading herself or putting down herself, but it's what, dude? What do you think that means? I mean,
Well, especially with some of the other things he had already seen.
Yeah.
In the same woods.
Yeah.
So, but this is fine.
Yeah, so it's definitely an entertaining film, but the realism is...
You gotta suspend it.
A lot, yep. But that's all I got.
I give it a 1. He's a person traveling, and he thinks more with his nether regions when he sees the pretty girl than his brain.
Yeah, he did kind of fall quick for her.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I found it a little harsh that the people of the town sent him to a cursed temple, expecting him to die. just because he was a debt collector. I get it, but bit much.
Yeah. It's like debt collectors play their role too in our society, unfortunately.
I mean, like, when he took out his book, which should have been protected anyway, and the fact that he was using the jacked up umbrella when it was beyond use was kind of dumb. But he takes out the book, and the ink is run everywhere, and it's just wrecked. He clearly has no case. And they send him to the temple, and he comes back the next day having made up what the debt was. And it was mostly for travel expenses anyway, just so he could leave. And the person that he was trying to get the debt from was like, here, yeah, I accept it. And a lot of that was probably because he actually lived when they didn't expect him to. But the fact that they didn't even question the book, like, it was... the ink was all run and everything. You couldn't read a thing throughout the book. But sure, I'll give you this amount.
Well, I know there's that one guy that had the bar or restaurant that is like, you know, if you don't have... He saw that the ink was run, and he's like, you have no proof that I owe a debt, and so he kicked him out.
Yeah, and that was the same dude. He came back the next day.
Oh. Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Making it up. And he's like, here, take it. So it was just...
Maybe because he knew he owed more, and so he's like, okay, I'm okay with giving this.
Well, they made it out to be like it was because he survived when everybody thought he was gonna die, but it was just a little off.
Yeah.
So I feel like it was a lot more for comedy than anything. The running joke of the guys chasing whoever was running through the town at the time went on a little bit long.
Yeah.
And if they're going to systematically look at everybody to see if they can find the person, then they're going to go place to place, not necessarily just hunting the random people that are only running or running across the street and down a little ways to slam someone else against a wall and squish their face and look at the pictures.
Which seems kind of useless because it's like if you're systematically following the city, I mean, the person could just be like, oh, I'm going to go to the other side of the city where you already looked.
Yeah. But they just didn't seem to have much of a grasp of what they were doing anyway.
Yeah.
So it just seemed weird.
Especially since they mentioned that arresting the wrong person is common.
Yes.
I have concerns.
So you think they would be a bit more careful about it and maybe not squish their face so they can be extra sure. But, you know.
Like, he has a beard. The guy we're looking for has a beard. He must be the murderer.
Yeah. There was a lot of random fighting, too, especially in the beginning. That I guess it was supposed to, some of it makes sense.
Like the two brothers that had been, like, fighting for 7 years?
Well, before that, even. When he stopped to rest on the road to the town.
Yeah, the person chasing the thief or whatever.
Yeah. So it was just all over the place. And, I mean, you can't really count much in the spirit realm. So...
Yeah. The spirit realm was pretty cool, though.
It was cool. Definitely. But, I mean, you kind of have to suspend all realism for there.
Mm-hmm.
So...
I made the teeth too strong. Woo!
Yeah.
I taste it. Taste it to my soul.
Isn't that kind of the point, though?
Mm-hmm.
She says almost regretfully.
Oh. It's like I can feel it searing on my tongue after I swallow it. I'm like, that tea is strong.
The flavor is strong with this one.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's all I got. Like, it's alright. It would require more than one watch through to really understand what all is going on and really get a lot of the meat out of it, but I don't know if I would give it another one, personally. Maybe if I got a random wild hair. But it's definitely not going to be a go-to for me.
Yeah, like, overall, I would say for someone that wants a movie that's kind of creeps on the edge of horror and is kind of like that romantic, like, tragedy type of story, Or I mean, to be fair, this story kind of follows a lot of common ghost stories that quite a few Asian countries have, which is kind of interesting because it's like, I feel like American urban legend and stuff, whenever they talk about ghosts, do have an element of tragedy, just like a lot of Asian countries. But for some reason, that doesn't typically translate to our movies. While in this, there's a lot of Asian horror movies where they kind of like translate these urban legends or ghost stories to film. So it's kind of an interesting...
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the horror, especially lately in America, is mostly concerned with like the effects.
Yeah.
Especially like gore and blood and things like that. So it tends to be more surface value kind of story instead of meaty, in-depth, detailed kind of storyline.
Yeah, so if you want a meatier story, I feel like this one's worth the watch. It's probably not going to be a person's new favorite movie of all time, but it definitely shows you the extent that you can take a ghost story. So, But thank you everyone for joining us today, and please comment on what you thought of the movie. If you'd like to recommend a movie, game, or tea, and keep up to date with our content, you can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and most places you listen to podcasts.
And if you'd like to support our podcast, please subscribe, like, and share our content. If you'd like to support us monetarily, we do have a Teespring and PayPal, or we have our affiliate link with Plum Deluxe. It does not affect the price of the tea, but it does allow us to do what we love. You can find all of these sites that I horribly mentioned down below. And until the next time, guys, stay safe and stay spoopy.
Bye.
Bye.